Next up, April Dunford. April, please join me on the stage here. So, you know how positioning works. Positioning works in the mind of a customer. And April has completely occupied that space in my mind. And it's like easy mental availability. I'm thinking positioning, there's April. So good job, well done. April and her book have made positioning great again, if I may make that a joke. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to hear you speak about positioning. So April, thank you for joining us, and please, the stage is yours.
Okay, good. Can everybody hear me? You can say something in the chat. Hopefully that means yes. I've seen nothing in the chat. Hopefully, good. People can hear me. All right, I'm going to share some slides. Let me see if this works. Now, give me a second. All right. I hope you can see everything. This is one of the great things about COVID is that we're learning how to use 9,000 different presentation tools. And so this is a new one for me, even though I've probably given 50 talks since we went into lockdown. Thanks for hanging around. I'm going to talk about positioning. And like Pep mentioned in the introduction, this is kind of my focus area and the thing that I do. And, you know, as the positioning person, one of the interesting things about that is that nobody really understands what positioning is. So whenever I talk about positioning, I usually have to start by defining what positioning is not. So it's not the same thing as messaging. It's not the same thing as a tagline. It's not your point of view on a market. It's not your why. It's not your, my personal pet peeve is when people talk about brand positioning. And in my mind, there's branding and there's positioning, and those two things are completely separate. In fact, everything you see on this slide, in my mind, flows from positioning, but positioning has to come first. You can think of it this way, like if everything we do in marketing and sales is the house, positioning is the foundation upon which the house is built. I define it this way. Positioning defines how our offering is the best in the world at providing some value that a well-defined set of customers cares a lot about. I'll repeat it. It defines how our offering is the best in the world at providing some value that a well-defined set of customers cares a lot about. That's a mouthful. That's a lot going on in that statement. And that's because positioning is made up of a bunch of different things. It fundamentally defines who do you compete with? Who are your competitive alternatives? It defines what's so special about your offering. What are the unique capabilities? And how do those capabilities translate into value for your customers? It defines what customers are we talking about here? So exactly who are those target customers? And then lastly, it defines the market category, or what is the market that you intend to win? When I'm talking to not marketing people, I have all sorts of analogies that I like to use to try to make it easy for people to understand, like, what is positioning all about. This is my favorite one right now. It's like the opening scene of a movie. Do you ever notice, like, when you go, like, remember when we used to go to the movie theater? We walk into the movie theater, you sit down in the seat, and the opening scene, the job is to kind of answer the big questions you've got. Where am I? What's going on here? What time frame is this? What's happening? This is a shot from the opening scene of the movie Apocalypse Now, widely regarded as one of the best opening scenes in movie history. And the opening scene of Apocalypse Now is cool. Like, it starts with this shot of the beach, and there's palm trees, and you might be looking at it thinking, you know what? I don't think it's apocalypse right now. Maybe it's apocalypse like half an hour from now or something. But then all of a sudden the music starts getting a little bit more intense, and we see, like, it's kind of like dust or something, and we realize, nope, that's smoke. And then we see a helicopter go by, and then boom, they set the beach on fire, and oh man, it's apocalypse right now, we're in the middle of the war. And then it changes to Martin Sheen, and we see that these are his thoughts and his memories. And then he's in the hotel room looks like crap, And he's drinking and smoking. He walks over to the window and he peeks out. We get the first line of dialogue in the movie. And he says, Saigon. Shit, I'm still only in Saigon. Every time I think I'm going to wake up back in the jungle. So here we are. We're 2.5 minutes into the movie, and we know a lot about it. We know we're in the middle of the Vietnam War. We're in Saigon. We know the lead character has some serious PTSD. We know the mood of this movie, man. It's not a laugh riot. And now we can settle in and pay attention to the rest of the details of the story. Positioning is a bit like that. You can think of it as context setting for products. And it's important because the markets that we operate in are intensely crowded. So here's an example of one market, just to like scare the pants off of you about how crowded your market is. This is, you're marketers, you've probably seen this. This is Scott Brinkler's marketing technology landscape, and this one's from a couple of years ago because I don't bother updating these slides. This is one guy's attempt to model one tiny corner of the universe of software products, just the stuff for marketing people. And look at that thing, it's a disaster. There's like 8,000 companies on that. If I'm a customer looking to buy something, how the heck do I ever know what to pay attention to here? So one of the ways customers figure this out is market categories. That's one of the clues we use. And you can see even Scott has attempted to make sense of this chart by breaking it into macro categories and micro categories. So the macro stuff is advertising and promotion, the colors, right? Orange is content and experience, yellow, social and relationships. So let's say I'm the vice president of marketing and I decide I want to do live chat on my website. And so I look at this and go, oh man, I can't pay attention to 8,000 things here, but you know, it kind of sounds like social and relationships maybe. And I look in there and, oh yeah, sure enough, there's a box in there called bots and live chat. Fantastic. Now I don't have to pay attention to all 8,000. I only have to pay attention to, well, you know what? It still kind of sucks. There's too many, but at least it's not 8,000. But that's not all positioning your product in a market does. What it actually does is more than just narrow down the competition. What it does is it sets off a really powerful set of assumptions in the minds of customers about what your product is all about. It works a bit like this. Like you ever watch any of these pitch contest shows like Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, one of those? Like imagine I'm doing one of those, except it's kind of a stupid one, and all I get to tell you is my market category, and that's it. So I walk in and I say, hello, dragons, sharks, whatever you are. I'm here to pitch you my revolutionary, fantastic, next generation, absolutely cool CRM, customer relationship management. That's it. That's all you get. Market category. That's it. Who's my competition? Well, it's Salesforce, right? They're the leader in that market. You must compete with Salesforce. Now, what features do you think that product has? Tracking a deal, tracking accounts, tracking stuff through a pipeline, CRM stuff, right? What is the title of the person that I sell that solution to? I sell it to the VP sales, head of sales. That's who buys the CRM. Now, how much does it cost? Now, how would you know that? I didn't tell you anything. Didn't tell you nothing. Didn't give you one feature. Didn't tell you one thing about it. How would you know what it costs? Well, if I assume that you compete with Salesforce, I assume that Salesforce is the leader in that market, I assume you cost less than that. So even though I didn't tell you anything about the product at all, but positioned it in a market, you made an awful lot of assumptions about what that thing was all about. Here's how this works. If I do a good job and I position my product in a market category such that it sets off a set of assumptions about my product that are true, fantastic. I just say marketing and sales a lot of work. I don't have to tell you who my competitor is. It's just assumed. I don't have to list every single feature of my product. Half that stuff is table stakes. Unfortunately, it works the same if I do a bad job. So if I do a bad job of it, position my product in a market category in a way that it sets off a set of assumptions about my product that are not true, well, now my marketing and sales team has got their work cut out for them undoing the damage that my positioning has already done. Let me give you an example. So I get a call from this company, and they're in Silicon Valley, and they're like, you know what? Our existing customers love us. They love us. They think we're fantastic. But you know what our problem is? When we first pitch it, nobody really can figure out what it is. Like, everybody thinks we're something we're not. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you know, pitch it to me. Let's hear it. And they said, well, here's our thing. We're lawyers, ex-lawyers. We used to be lawyers. Now we're software guys. And we made this thing, and it's email for lawyers. And I'm like, email for lawyers? No kidding. Who thought that lawyers needed their own email? But okay, I got it. Email for lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, thank God. So email for lawyers, and then they jump into the demo, and they're showing me this thing, and it's cool, and the lawyers and their clients are talking to each other, and I'm like, hey, so how does the calendar work on this thing? And the guy says, oh, we don't have a calendar. And I'm like, wait, what? What? How do you replace Gmail if you don't have a calendar? They're like, oh, we don't replace Gmail. We don't replace email at all, actually. I'm like, you tell me the lawyers need 2 emails. They're going to have Gmail and they're going to have your thing. I don't understand how that works. And I'm like, okay, back up. You said everybody loves your stuff. So how come they love you so much? And they said, oh, we've got this thing. It's this special feature. It's got a patent on it. And it's this super secure context-aware file sharing. What it does is it looks at the documents that the lawyer's got to share with their clients. It figures out who should have access to them, puts it in a super secure place, and it automatically only gives access to people to the document that need it, and everybody else gets locked out. I'm like, whoa, that actually sounds kind of cool. But it ain't email. Like, if I wanted to solve that problem, would I buy email to solve it? No, I wouldn't. So what these guys actually have is a really exceptional, kind of cool, innovative product masquerading as crappy email. Now, what if I took it, I put it in another market? What if I picked that thing up and I said, you know what? It's not email. What this is team collaboration for lawyers. Same product. I didn't change product. I just repositioned it. Team collaboration for lawyers. Well, now who's my competition? Well, it ain't Gmail anymore, is it? Slack, probably, right? Microsoft Teams. And what feature do you assume it has? Well, probably some cool collaboration thing for lawyers to collaborate with their clients. And that's exactly what they've got. The other cool thing about picking it up is the pricing changes. Everybody assumes email is kind of free. You go to team collaboration, people are paying money for that. So if we think positioning is important and we got to get it done, how do we actually do it? Well, the first thing is we need to actually position deliberately. Most of the time, companies come to me and they have the positioning that happened when the original founder decided they wanted to make a product. A founder woke up in the morning and said, you know what sucks? Email. I'm going to make better email. Or, you know what stinks? CRM. I'm going to make a better one of those. And then they go out and they make it. They put it in front of customers. There's stuff that customers like, stuff that customers don't like. They change it. Fast forward a couple of years, and all of a sudden you got this thing. You think it's email, but a customer coming at it cold looks at it and says, I don't know. It doesn't even have a calendar. What the hell? That's not an email. I don't know what that thing is. And so what you actually need to do is position deliberately. You need to back up and say, what is the best positioning for this? Not my assumed positioning. Here's another example. So this is a company here in Canada. I always point this way because they're up the road from me. They're called ClearPath Robotics, founded by a bunch of guys with advanced degrees in mechatronics engineering. They're robot guys, so they start a company making robots. So eventually they get this idea for this robot you see on the right-hand side of this slide. And what this robot does is it drives around a manufacturing plant and it delivers things from one place to another. Now, if you're like me, you don't know a ton about robotics, you might not think that sounds like a hard problem to solve. But in fact, that is a very hard problem to solve. And that thing is full of mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence, and it's a miracle of modern technology. So they've got this thing, they're going to sell it to the manufacturing plants. They get a meeting with the folks at the manufacturing plant that buy robots, and they walk in and they say, hello, we are ClearPath Robotics, and we are here to sell you some fancy new robots. And the minute they say that, you know what the reaction is they get? The manufacturing plant guy goes, robots. Yeah, We got robots, man. Yeah, we've been buying robots for decades. In fact, we have approved robot vendors, and you're not one of them. We know what robots cost. Your thing is way too expensive. And you know, I don't even believe robots. And what's going on here is because the buyer is thinking robot, and when they think that, they think of this thing on the left-hand side of the slide here. And the ClearPath guys are like, no. We're fancy robots, way fancier robots. We got mapping and sensors, and it drives around and all this stuff. And what happens is it's taking them 5 meetings before the customer is starting to get the idea, like, oh, this isn't the kind of robot I was thinking about before. This is the other kind of thing. So eventually, the company says, you know what? Maybe robot isn't doing us any favors. Maybe we need to reposition this thing. So they take a step back and they're like, okay, what makes us special? What's different about us? It's mobility. The thing drives around. It's mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence. So what drives around and has mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence? Maybe what we've built here is a self-driving car. So they reposition this thing as autonomous vehicles for industrial uses. And then that repositioning, well, of course it drives around. Of course it's full of mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence. And of course I'm not going to get that from the same vendor that sells me a thing that picks up a roll of tape and puts it in a box. So that's step 1. You got to position deliberately. Now, you people are marketers. So sometimes when I give this talk to marketers, the marketers at this point, they get this look on their face, you know, and I can't see you, but maybe you've got this look on your face now, and it's this look that says, well, but hang up, April. This is not my job. I don't get to decide whether we're robots or self-driving cars. Like, that's not how this works. I'm the marketing person. Like, the CEO figures that out, or the head of product figures that out. I don't figure that out. And I hear you. I get you. I feel you, in fact, because I used to think that. And I had my first couple of senior jobs. I thought I was a pretty hotshot marketer. And I thought my job was to just take that stuff that the founder or the CEO or my boss gave me and just apply my marketing genius to it. And that was my job. And so this is my highly technical diagram of how I thought this worked. Like, so basically, you know, my boss or the CEO, whatever, would give me whatever. You know, here's who I think the customer is, and here's you know, go out and wave your marketing magic wand there, April, and get us the revenue. And then I would apply my marketing genius to that thing, and it wouldn't matter what you gave me. I was such a hotshot marketer. Freaking unicorns are coming out the other side of that thing. I got this. And what happened was, instead, I would get these products, like not unlike the email for lawyers, where they're like, okay, go out there and market that email for lawyers. And I'm out there running campaigns, and I'm doing beautiful storytelling, and I got genius email stuff going on, and I'm applying all my marketing genius to it. But the reality is, the stuff coming in was poo. And so the stuff coming out was kind of just slightly more sparkly poo. And so what I realized is that if the inputs are bad, then there's only so much I can do. And even if my boss doesn't think that's my job, even if my CEO doesn't think that's my job, if the positioning is weak, I can't do anything good. And I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up to be poo polisher. I didn't sign up to like take whatever and, oh, geez, the stuff doesn't work because the positioning's bad or whatever. No, you're dependent on that. So you cannot accept the poo when the poo comes to you. You're going to have to say, no, actually, I can't build these campaigns. I can't do this stuff. I can't write messaging. I can't do any of this until we get the positioning tight. So you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. If you're going to have to figure out a way to do it, how do we actually do it? Well, step 1, we got to realize we got to do it deliberately. Step 2, I got to follow a process. Now, if you go to marketing school, which I did not, I actually have a degree in systems design engineering, go figure. But at some point I landed in marketing and I was like, oh man, I better learn something about marketing. So then I went to marketing school and I read a bunch of books and I took a bunch of courses, and people kept telling me about this thing called the positioning statement. And that's how I was taught to do positioning. And this is like legit the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So what the positioning statement is it's like this kind of Mad Libs fill in the blanks thing where you say, we are a blank that does blank, unlike blank. And I'm filling in things like, here's my market category, and here's my competitor, and here's my whatever. The first time I was introduced to this, I was taking a course at Northwestern University, fancy marketing school in the United States. And I'm taking a class, and the guy comes out and he explains this positioning statement thing. And I had just repositioned a product that we thought it was desktop productivity software, and we repositioned it as an embeddable database for mobile devices. Pretty different market categories. So this guy's saying there's a blank there and it says market category. And I'm like, well, wait. And I put my hand up. I'm like, but how does that work? Like, how do you know what the best market category is? Like, I can't just make that up. Like, and I explain the whole situation. I'm like, how could I have saved myself a year there and known that this thing was actually an embeddable database for mobile devices instead of this, spreadsheet thing that we thought we had? Like, how do I know what the best market category is? Because as far as I can tell, most products can be positioned in multiple different market categories. So you got a blank there. How do I know what the best answer is? And you know what the guy said to me? The guy give me this whole professor thing. He put his glasses down on his nose and he looked at me and he's like, who's that talking? I'm like, me, it's me, I'm at the back here. And I'm like, how do you do it? How do you know what's the best one? And he says, trust me, April, you'll just know. And at that point I was like, nobody knows. That's the answer to that question. Nobody knows how to do this. But I figured I'd already positioned a couple of products, so maybe I could figure this out. So I took a bit of an engineering approach to this. I said, well, let's look at positioning. Can I break it up into pieces and then solve for the component pieces, put it back together, voila, good positioning? That's how we solve problems in engineering land. So I thought, okay, let's look at the component pieces. Well, that's pretty easy. It's the only thing the positioning statement is good for, is it tells me what the important bits are. They're the blanks. So basically, more or less, we have 5: competitive alternatives, unique capabilities or features, value that my product delivers to customers, who are those customers, who's my best fit target customer to go after, and the last one is market category. Now, I look at that, and then you say, well, how would I figure out what the best answer is for each of these? Well, the first thing you notice is that each of those component pieces has a relationship to the others. They do not exist in isolation. They don't pick anything there. So let's pick value. The differentiated value that my product can deliver to a customer is absolutely dependent on my unique features, right? But hey, my unique differentiated features are only unique or differentiated when I compare them to a competitive alternative. So those 3 things are all related to each other. So I don't get to just pick one of those. They're all related. Target customer. My best fit customer is the customer that cares the most about the value that I can deliver. So those 2 things are related. And then the last bit is market category. This is a bit more esoteric, but the best market category, you think about it this way, it's the context I position my product in such that the value that I deliver is obvious to the people I'm trying to communicate that to. So I need value and target customer before I can figure out my best market category. So everything relates to everything else. How do I pick the best answer for any of these things? And I'm telling you, for 2 years, I noodled on this. I wasn't sure how to do it. I thought what you would do is just pick a candidate, pick a spot, work your way around, get candidate positioning, go out to the market, test it. If it's good, great. If it doesn't work, then you throw it out and you come up with another one. And eventually what got me out of this is, well, it's a long story, but I spent 6 months reading Clayton Christensen, Jobs to be Done stuff, and it went way down that rat hole. When it came up, what I decided was you actually have to start with competitive alternatives. If you do not start there, then what you will get is positioning that sounds really good in the office, but it doesn't win out in the market because it isn't differentiated. So it works like this. first I got to look at who do I actually compete with. Once I understand that, then I can say, all right, here's my competition. What have I got that they don't have, capabilities-wise? Then I can take those capabilities, map that to value. That gets me to my differentiated value. Once I have value, then I can say, what are the characteristics of a target customer that makes them care a lot about that value? That's how I do my segmentation. And then once I have value and target customers, I can say, well, what is the context that I position my product in such that this value is obvious to these folks? Now, there's loads of ways to mess this up. Otherwise, like, it's not that easy. The most common mistakes I see are step number one. When you get to competitive alternative, often people think competitive alternatives are just competitors, and they're not. So often, especially when we're selling software to businesses, often the competitor is like, how else would I solve this problem? And if you ask yourself that, like, every week I get a customer, I get a startup come to me and say, hey, I got this product, it's really great. And I'll say, okay, who do you compete with? And they'll say, yeah, we compete with like all these companies, and they'll give me some list of companies nobody's ever heard of. And I'll say, well, how do you beat them? And ease of use. We're just easier to use. These guys, you got to do 15 clicks to do a thing, and with us, you just click one. It's amazing. We're easy to use. That's why. And then I say, well, hang on. I never heard of any of these companies. You ever lose a deal to them? And often they'll say, no, we don't. And I'm like, oh, so if you didn't exist, what would a customer do? And the answer is often, well, they probably just do it in a spreadsheet, or they hire an intern to do it. Now, look at you. You just positioned all around ease of use as your differentiating thing. But if your real competition is a spreadsheet, or even worse, the intern, how are you going to beat the intern on ease of use? You're not going to beat the intern on ease. The intern's super easy to use. I'm like, Joey, get me a coffee, fill in the spreadsheet, come back when you're done. That's easy. It doesn't get any, your software is not easy to that. But you have lots of differentiators from Joey. Like, Joey makes mistakes. Joey quits on you. Joey can't keep track of what customers are doing what. There's 1,000 reasons why you're better than Joey. The trick here is you need to understand who the real competitive alternatives are in the first place. There's lots of other ways to mess this up. And if you want to go way down the positioning rat hole, I wrote a whole book on it. It costs a whopping $7. You can go nuts and read everything I know. Here, I'm going to leave you one quickie story at the end, and then I'm going to wrap it up and take questions. So if you have questions, put it in the question tab right now. I tell this story all the time, and people are probably sick of it, but I don't care. It's a good story, so I'm going to tell it again. So early in my career, I worked for a company, and we were positioned as enterprise CRM. Now, this was back before Salesforce was a thing, but back then there was this other big company that completely dominated enterprise CRM. Salesforce was down at the SMB level, but enterprise CRM was totally dominated by this company called Siebel. And so, not surprisingly, whenever we got into a sales call with a customer, first question we get is we'd say, hi, we're enterprise CRM. And they go, oh, that's neat. How are you different and better than Siebel? And the answer was, we kind of weren't. Like, in every way, they were better than us. Like, they had 2 billion revenue. We were doing like 1.8 million revenue. They had 8,000 employees. I think I was employee 22. They had 400 customers. We had 5 or 6. But we did have 2 things that we thought were really differentiating. One was this feature that we had it, they didn't have it. We could model a relationship in a different way than they did. The problem is if you look down if I go back to this slide where, it's competitive alternatives, we knew who that was, unique features, we knew what that was, but we had no clue how to do that translation between unique attributes and value. So we show this feature all the time to customers, and it looked really good too. So we put it in a demo, we'd show it to people, and then the customers would go, oh, that's very interesting. What do you use that for? And we'd say, anything you want, because we didn't really know. And so that would confuse customers, and then they'd say, what else do you got? And then we'd say our second differentiating feature, which was price. Like we were desperate to close deals, and so if you asked for a discount, we gave you one. So needless to say, things weren't going so well. And so how we ended up getting out of this was kind of just luck. What happened was we hired a sales rep. And we hired the sales rep because he was friends with the head of investment banking at Goldman Sachs, and he promised us he could get us a meeting. We had high standards. Yeah, so we hired this guy. We went to the meeting. I came along to the meeting just to see, well, mainly I just wanted to see what the office of the head of investment banking at Goldman Sachs looks like. It's very large. It has a helicopter pad outside, and that's true. Anyways, we do the pitch. And we get to the part of the meeting where we show our special feature. Sales rep does a great job, demos it, and the head of investment banking gets really excited. He's like, wait, what? Are you telling me that if two people don't work at the same company together, but they used to, you can model that? And I'm like, yeah, we can. And he's like, but wait, if like, they sit on a board together, you can model that. And we're like, yeah, you can. He's like, whoa, hang on. I need vice presidents. He runs down the hall and he comes back with these two guys that work for him that are vice presidents. And he's like, show them the thing. And so we show the demo again. And they start asking the same questions, like, if two people belong to the same country club, can you model that? And we're like, yes, we can. And they're like so excited. They're jumping up and down and talking their banker language. And then me and the rep are cowering back in the corner. Anyways, we close a deal just like that. And so we're all happy. And we get this thought, maybe investment bankers dig our stuff. We should go talk to some other ones. So we get a couple other meetings. We go in, the exact same thing happens. We show them the thing. Bankers jump up and down. Everyone gets excited. We close the deal. Importantly, it triggered a conversation back in the office about maybe we are not actually CRM for enterprises. Maybe we're CRM for investment banks. Now, that doesn't seem like a great big change, but let me tell you, it was a big change. And it was a change in mindset in the office. And at the beginning, we had a hard time getting our minds around it. We're like, well, if we say we're just for investment bankers, then no one else is going to call us. And then the way we got over that was we realized no one calls us anyway. In fact, no one ever calls us. And the only deals we were ever winning were with investment bankers. So why not just say it? Why not say we're CRM for investment bankers, position it that way? Maybe the bankers will call us because we look like we're that. The board didn't like it. The board was like, that's just your little niche thing. Like, we didn't pay you to be a little niche thing. And we said, look, don't worry about it. We're going to position for investment bankers right now. And once we start getting real traction with investment banking, then we're going to widen it out and we're going to say we're CRM for investment banks and retail banks. We'll go get the retail banks too. Then we'll say we're CRM for banking. And then once we've got that, then we can go get insurance. And if we get insurance, then we can be CRM for financial services. And at that point, we're a great big company. Then we're going to go take those SIBO guys out. So we did that and we adjusted the positioning. We became CRM for investment banks. It was absolutely transformational to the business. So the first thing was the bankers started to call us. The second thing was we never got in a head-to-head battle with SIBO again. So we'd walk into the meeting and we'd say, we're CRM for investment banks. And the bankers would look at us like, wait, doesn't SIBO do that? Do you guys compete with SIBO? And we're like, oh, SIBO. We love them. They're fantastic. So big, so great, so much money. Oh my God. They're like the world's greatest general purpose CRM for, like, I don't know, call centers and manufacturing plants, retailers and stuff. And not you, Wolf of Wall Street. You need something special. Let me show you this thing. And then we show them the thing and close the deal or whatever. And so that accelerated everything. We went from $1.5 million to a little under 80 million in around 18 months. And the end of this story is that SIBO got so sick of us kicking their tail all up and down Wall Street that they came and acquired us for $1.3 billion. That's it. That's the end. I'll summarize this. 1, you got to position deliberately. 2, if you're going to do it, you got to follow a process. And 3, you don't want to be a poo polisher for the rest of your life, so don't do that. Here's where you can find me. I'm at April Dunford, or April at April Dunford, and I'm going to stop sharing now so I can see myself, and maybe we will switch to questions.
Thank you so much. That was hilarious and wonderful and so insightful. I've read your book. I've listened to probably like 9 podcast episodes where you're in. Still, I heard new things, and the way you tell stories, it's just, I can just put you on as a background on my house, TV.
Oh yeah, no, people do.
Yeah, wonderful. I do have questions as well.
Sure, yeah.
So, question number one is, so if so people want to put you in a box, are you a CRM? And then if you are, then I'm going to make assumption. So, do you want to put yourself in a box so that people would make associations, or would you also want to be ambiguous so people couldn't make any associations?
Oh, yeah. This is a great question. So, and often you would think that, like, and in fact, some people would come to me and say, well, can't you just let the customers figure out your own positioning? Like, don't say what you are, and they'll figure it out. The problem is customers are terrible at this, like terrible. And they will often, what they'll do is they'll search for clues. And they will often make a bunch of assumptions based on whatever they hit first. So they'll say, oh, there's an inbox, it's email. Got it. And you're like, no, it's not. But it's too late. Now they think you're email. And they're like, where's the calendar or whatever? And you're like, no, it's not. No, let me bring you back here. No, it's not. And so often this obvious first thing, like, oh, you must be this, will get their mind stuck in this box. And then you're going to have all this work to bring them back. And so you'd be better to just say, look, we're this, and give them a starting point and point them in the right direction. And now all I got to do is just move you along that path. As opposed to if we just leave it, like the great example of this, I don't know if you ever heard the story of the guy that made the Segway. So like when the guy was developing the Segway, he was like Elon Musk of his time, right? So he'd been successful entrepreneur, done a bunch of successful businesses, whatever. And so he kind of announced, like, I'm doing a new thing, and everybody lost their shit. They're like, oh my God, the new thing, it's going to be so cool. And he raised like 100 million VC, which back then was like spectacular money. And so, but he wouldn't tell anybody what it was, the thing he was building, because he didn't want anybody to steal it, right? So he kept saying, what I'm building is a revolution in human transportation. So what does everybody think? Flying cars, we're getting flying cars. Everybody's like, oh my God, we're getting flying cars. And so it's flying cars everywhere. The media's all through it. Everybody's combing through his patents and then, oh my God, Josh, flying cars, we're getting flying cars. Everyone's so excited. So he goes to launch this thing. We're finally going to see what it is. He gets invited on Good Morning America. He's going to launch this Good Morning America, invites the guy, come on in. We're going to do the big launch. We're going to do the big reveal of this thing. And everyone's like, flying cars, flying cars. And dude rolls out in a Segway. And everyone's like, what? That sucks. and then you know what happened then? Everyone said, well, what is it? What is it? And he refused to answer. He said, it's a revolution in human transportation. And so literally people were like, the early users had all these stories about how, the guy would say, you know what's the worst part about owning a Segway? You drive it on the road and everybody's yelling at you, saying, get that scooter off the highway. But you drive it on the sidewalk and ladies pushing baby strollers are like, get that car off the sidewalk. Like no one can figure out what it was. The thing was a spectacular flop. So like, and meanwhile, like the patents for that stuff just sold again a year or so ago, right? That thing was full of amazing invention and stuff, but no one could get their head around it. I would argue that we have the same thing with, there's a few examples I can point to right now that have the same thing. They're not doing a good job of telling me what it is. And so the expectations get completely, Magic Leap's a good one. Like, what the frick is it? No one knows what it is, right? And so they were like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And here we are X number of years later, and we're still scratching our heads trying to figure out what the thing is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like the electric scooters that are now ubiquitous in cities, right? They went mass viral, if I may say so, because also it's a scooter.
It's a scooter. I know what it is. I get it. Yeah. Like we could have sped this whole electric vehicle thing up a bajillion years if that Segway guy hadn't blown it so bad.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's also do some audience questions here. So Grace Ann is asking, how do you reposition and change the mind of customers about your segment when your company already exists and has messaging around this?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of repositioning work. Like back when I was a VP marketing, like I'm a consultant now, but back when I was a VP marketing, I repositioned lots of things. And part of it depends on how big you are and how much people know about you. So when you're really established, is quite hard because, you know, you've established this bit in the minds of customers, and you got to use that as the starting point and stretch them. You can't just say, oh, we're not that anymore, we're this totally completely different thing. Like, that usually doesn't work. If you're well established in the market, people know what you are. But you can do, like, Gainsight's a good example of this, right? They're a survey tool. They're in the survey market. They're dominating the survey market. They're there till they're 200 million revenue. When they're 200 million revenue, they're like, you know what? We're going to stretch the borders of this market. And we're now going to stretch it and say, you know what this is? This is like customer experience or whatever that thing, the customer engagement. I forget what it was, but they called it something else and they stretched it. And so that worked well because we're not saying, oh, we don't do that thing we did before. It's like, we do that plus. We do that and it's evolving into this. So that works a lot better. The other thing I'll tell you is startups come to me and they're really worried about, well, we positioned as a CRM, but now we realize we're not a CRM at all. And so we're going to have to do this gradual switch thing. And in that case, you're a small company, like you're less than 5 million revenue. Nobody knows you. Just forget about the old stuff, cut loose, go to the new stuff. No one cares. And they'll say, well, what about the existing customers? Existing customers are going to get all mad because we used to say we were a database and now we're a business intelligence tool. They're going to be all freaked out. And like literally, they don't go to your website. Literally, they don't care. You do this switch over. You send the email around if you're, if you feel like it. And all they ask is like, well, wait a second, is my price going up? No. Are you cutting off any features or anything? No. Oh, good. Okay, I'll go back to ignoring you and just enjoying your product the way it is. The positioning is super important when a new customer is coming in and trying to figure out. Existing customers, reposition it all over the place. Nobody cares. Now, new customers, it matters if you're established and the new customers like, I don't buy things from IBM because they're not easy to use. It'd be really hard for you at IBM to all of a sudden wake up tomorrow and say, we got this thing and it's all about ease of use. You're going to have to work with the perceptions that are already there. But if you're little, like less than 10 million revenue, you pick that stuff up, put it anywhere you want, and it's easy.
Good deal. Michael is asking here. So let's say I am an SMS marketing app exclusive for Shopify. How does Shopify being the ecosystem impact my positioning?
Oh, well, I mean, I like that, right? So what's neat about saying I'm the SMS app specifically for Shopify is all the other SMS apps, you kind of position them as general purpose. They're like, yeah, there's lots of SMS apps in the planet, man, but there's only one SMS app for Shopify. Now, let me tell you what we do that's jazzy for Shopify that the other guys don't. And so you'll get a shot at anybody that's using Shopify. You should land on a short list because you got this thing that's really specific for that. Like a lot of times that's great positioning when you're trying to establish initial beachhead market of folks. And then you can position it like that in the Shopify store even. And then people are in the Shopify store and you're the only one that's for Shopify. You should get on the list at least, right? And then it's up to you to prove, well, is there anything really differentiating you? Like what special Shopify stuff have you got? So you can't just say it. It's actually going to be true.
Mm-hmm. So let's say I pick a particular positioning for my company. Mm-hmm. And it's not going so well. How would I figure out that it's positioning that needs work and it may, or my marketing sucks?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I'll tell you how I used to do this when I was VP marketing, because I was always trying to assess this when I was having job interviews and stuff. If you've got so there's a handful of things. So one is, you got existing happy customers. So you got a bunch of customers, they picked you over all the other alternatives and they're happy as clams, right? So, you did some kind of happiness score on the Net Promoter or something. And you're like, I got existing customers, happy as clams, and the business is growing. You're not selling nothing, it's growing. But you sit in on a sales call in these first sales calls where people are getting the pitch for the first time and it's clear they have no clue what you're talking about. And so they're in there going like, pitch it to me again. What is it? Or worse, they're comparing you to things that you don't actually compete with. Like, so you're like Salesforce, and you're like, no, we're not Salesforce. God, no. Or worse, they'll say things like, "Yeah, I get what you do. I just don't get why anybody would pay for that." Right? Like, but meanwhile, you got all these super happy customers and like, "Oh my God, I'd be dead without it." So there's a gap between what these customers know and the way you're representing the product to people that don't know nothing. And that closing that gap is what good positioning can do for you. Now, sometimes you'll get, and I have this occasionally, where companies come to me and they're like, I think we have a positioning problem. And when you look at it, it's like every time they pitch to someone, they love it and they get it. They're just not doing enough pitches. So that's marketing's problem. You're just not getting enough leads. You need more leads. You need to get more at bats. So if it's like you're closing everything that comes to you, everybody gets it. They fly through the pipeline, they close. We just don't have enough stuff coming in the pipeline. Well, that's not, then I send them to Asia in those cases. I'm like, talk to Asia. She's going to help you get some more customers. But, but if they have this problem that's like, like I get people people are completely confused in the first sales call. That's not a marketing problem in my mind. That's a positioning problem.
What if you're a low cost vendor, so you don't have a sales team, you don't do sales calls, you're $9 a month, so you would have sales is not a channel where you can learn. So then what do you do?
Then you better figure out your channels where you're going to learn. So if you don't have that, then you're going to have to get that some other way. And so how I've done that in those situations is I do sales calls. You pick some people out of your pipeline, you call them, and you pitch them, and then you ask them.
So you do things that don't scale in the beginning just to learn.
The other thing you can do is you can look at, it's harder. It's harder. I'll tell you that. And this is, I think, one of the biggest things. Like if you don't have some kind of way of getting that stream of feedback from customers, you can do things like, I used to do things like surveys where immediately after the person, or not immediately, but like after the person's purchased and they're onboarded and they're whatever, you survey them and you ask them, what's surprising about the product? Was there anything surprising? Good and bad. And sometimes that'll tell you about the gap. And then the other question I like is, again, like if we didn't exist, what would you do? And that tells you who they're comparing you with.
Brilliant. All right, let's end on this brilliant note. April, thank you so much. You've been amazing. Everybody read her book. Christmas is coming. Buy the book.
Christmas is coming.
Yourself and everybody else you know.
You're late on the shopping, people. There's only a week.
And April, we'll see you online. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.